right, it's that time. I can't believe this summer's flying by. It's already July. Real estate market update. Let's dive into it. What's been going on in Massachusetts for the last 30 days? Well, before we get into that, let's talk about mortgage rates, right? Because it's always good to know kind of where the market is. And it's not too different from last month, but let's throw a couple of, financial institutions out there, right? So this is from People Credit Union. People Credit Union, the interest rate right now on a 30-year mortgage, 6%. And the APR, 6.085%. And as I've explained in other videos, what you really want to look at is the APR, because in a quick way to say it, it's going to include some of the fees and different things like that. So that's really what you want to look at when you're comparing the different numbers. So just to give you a comparison, Leader Bank, another bank, I've talked about before, I've done, a lot of deals with, some good people in there. Interest rate there, 6.49%, and their APR is 6.549%. So they get really specific there. Well, actually, people did too. But yeah, so that's some of the numbers. 30-year mortgage. Again, like I threw out there last video, now, I'm working at Bay Coast Bank. I'm on the insurance side, but same building, we're all under the same roof. So, that's another option for you too to look at. I talk to a lot of the mortgage professionals there, and, there's some cool things that they can do. So, I recommend, if you don't really know anybody, you don't know where to start, you can reach out to me. I'm more than happy to, help you out, get you paired up with somebody that's great. But other than that, let's not dive too much on that. It's not a mortgage video, it's a real estate video. All right, so Massachusetts, what's been going on in Massachusetts? So on average, 2% above asking, average list price, $891,000, average sales price, $904,000. And I know sometimes I mention this, but there are two different ways that people look at this. There's the average, and then there's also the median, right? So when I do these reports, I'm looking at the average, okay? And I dive into another video, median versus average. If you ever want to know the difference, just reach out to me. I'll explain it to you. But I don't want to take up everybody's time on this video. But just so you know, if you do see median versus average out there, and you're like, hey, that number's a little different, that's why. It's two different things. I like average because it's the average, right? Can't go wrong. Whenever you do things, just average it out, right? But I do see a purpose for median. It can sometimes guide you more towards what's kind of really going on sometimes. But let's, again, I'm already wasting more time than I wanted to talking about it. So let's get right into it, right? So average days on market in Massachusetts, 33 days. And number of homes sold, single family homes, 4,611. So just if you're wondering, hey, how many sold in Massachusetts? That's what we're looking at for numbers here, right? Just for single family homes. So what are the categories, right? What's it been looking like? So again, seeing this trend for a long time now. The lower end to the middle, price points. And then when you get to the higher price points, you see a little shift where things start to go below asking when you get to the higher price points. And it's no different this month, from 200,000 all the way up to 2,499,000. All those categories on average above asking. 3% above, 1%, 2%, 2%, 3%, 2%, even. I could go on and on. You get the idea. That's what it's looked like, right? But soon as you get over 2,499,000 and you go into the 2,500,000 to $2,999,000 range, it goes from asking to 1% below asking. And then it just continues to start to go down, the higher you get in the price point. So when you go to 3 million to 3,999,000, again, 1% below. But then when you go to the $4 million range, 4 million to 4,999,000, 3% below asking. And that was based on 15 homes. And then when you go above that, 5 million to $9,999,000 range, 2% below asking in that whole range, and that was 14 homes. So what about number of homes? So for a long time now, the category that's been reigning supreme has been the $500,000 to $599,000 range. And it's really close this month, but there's actually a category that took that one out as far as number of homes sold. So the 1 million to $1,499,000 range, which you'll see a lot on the Hot Towns video when I talk about the hottest towns in Massachusetts. That video come out after this, but that range, we're starting to see some things happen in that range. So for Massachusetts overall, 630 homes sold in that range. And then the range we've been talking about, the 500 to 599,000, 605 homes. So I don't know if that was a 1 month thing or if we're going to start to see a trend here and a shift, but that's what we're seeing. And just to look at, how high above asking or below asking did these categories go? 2% above asking for the $500 to $599,000 range, and then the $1 million to $1.49 million range, 3% above asking. So those are some of the key numbers that I was looking at, in Massachusetts overall. Oh, and then also for Massachusetts, the higher price point homes, the 2.5 million and up, just to give you a rough idea on the number of homes. So even though they were below asking, 1%, 2%, 3% below, it was still a large number of homes to get those numbers. So, 72 homes were in the 2.5 to $2.99 million range. And then 49 homes, in the $3 million range. And then, as we already talked about, 4 million and 5 million. Plus, you got 15 and 14 homes in those ranges. All right, Bristol County. Let's talk about Bristol County. Bristol County on average, 1% over asking. Average list price, $655,000. Average sales price, $661,000. Average days on market, 37. And that was based on 403 homes. So also here, there's a big line of demarcation. That's probably the first thing I want to dive into is the line of demarcation. So the $900,000 to $999,000 range, 17 homes in that range, they went on average 2% over asking. As soon as you go over the $999,000 range and you go into the $1 million to $1,499,000 range, it drops to 2% below asking. So you're going 2% above 900 to 999,000. Go 1 million to 1,499,000. You go from 2% above to 2% below. So if you're looking to get into Bristol County, 2% below, 1 million to 1,499,000, you might see opportunity there. And what's interesting with Bristol County is when you're looking at overall Massachusetts, and I looked at the hot towns, that category is really hot. So that was kind of interesting to see, in Bristol County, to see that number like that. So what else do we want to look at in Bristol County, right? So the number one category for number of homes, right on track with what we've been seeing, 500,000 to 599,000, that range there. 106 of the homes, not even close for a number two, and they want on average 2% over asking. So on average, give you some math, 530,000 was the list price, 541,000 was the sale price. So yeah, not crazy amount of money, but hey, 2% above, another $11,000, not bad. And looking through all the other categories, you got 1% above, 1% below, even, 2% above, 3% above, 2% above, 1% above, 2% above. So all those aboves, they were all in that 450,000 to like $999,000 range. So once you get, outside of those ranges, it starts to even off or even go below asking. All right, we're going to do some bonus content again because I got some good feedback diving into these other counties, Plymouth County, Norfolk County, just to give you an idea what's going on in those counties really quick. I'm not going to do this every time, but, because I don't want to make these videos super long. So let's just dive into it and me stop talking and that'll be better, right? So let's go. So on average in Plymouth County, 1% over asking. Average list price, $848,000. Average sales price, $856,000. 32 days on average on market, and 501 homes sold, in Plymouth County. And a couple categories did jump out to me in Plymouth County, right? So number one category here, again, 500,000 to 599,000. 92 of the homes sold there. Again, that was the best category. It wasn't that close. And they went on average 3% over asking. And then the other category that I wanted to talk about, this one was the other way, right? So this is interesting. If you're looking to get into Plymouth County, look at this category, okay? From 350,000 to 399,000, 14 homes sold, so not one or two, they went on average 2% below asking. So the average list price there was $384,000, and the average sales price $372,000. So yeah, that's not crazy numbers as far as thousands, but when you look at the numbers and you're doing the percentages, you know, that was a big difference, right? Because as soon as you go above that, 400,000 or 499, 449, you go up to 1% above. So if you're looking to get a deal, you know, Plymouth County, maybe you can find one, you know, in that $350,000 to $399,000 range. And what else has been going on? It's kind of similar as what we see. You know, all these middle range homes here from like 400,000 on up to 1,999,000. It's all asking, above asking, all in that range. But then another line of demarcation. So when you go right over the $1,999,000 range and you go to the $2 million range to $2,499,000 range, so it's $2 million to $2.5 million, practically a dollar off, right? You're dropping to 2% below asking. So 1.5 million to 1.9 million, or 1,999,000, 1% above. As soon as you go over that to the 2 million to almost $2.5 million range, 2% below. So pretty big swing there. And that 2% below was 12 homes. So again, not just one or two, 12 homes on average, 2% below. All right, bonus material continues. We got Norfolk County. So what's going on in Norfolk County? And stay tuned, because we're going to get into investment properties. We're going to go into my hometowns. So, you know, hopefully you're enjoying this bonus content, because it's good to have extra data to compare what's going on, right? The more data you have without going through everything, you know, and spending 4 hours on it, you know, just the better decisions you can make as far as what you're thinking about doing. So let's look at Norfolk. 3% on average over asking. Average list price in Norfolk, $1,148,000. Average sales price, $1,172,000. Average days on market, 28, and that was based on 529 homes. And there's some categories all over the place in Norfolk. So from 450,000 to 2,499,000. So again, that whole like mid-range there, starting to get into the higher ranges. Asking, you know, 2% above, 2% above, 3% above, 5% above, you know, 3%, 4%, 2%. Lines of demarcation is right before this whole range and right after it. So I said it started at 450,000 to 499,000. That was 2% above for that little section there. Right below that, again, kind of similar to Plymouth, right? 400,000 to 449,000, 2% below asking. And that was 6 homes. So 2% below. Then as soon as you go over 449,000 or 450,000, you go to 2% above. So we're seeing that, you know, where it starts to get into the mid-ranges, those a little bit just outside of it, you're seeing some opportunities there. And then as far as number of homes, so it's not the 500,000 or 599 category here. It's actually the 700,000 to $799,000 range. So that's the number one category, you know, in Norfolk. And it was 92 homes. Oh, I'm giving you false information. Hold on here. One difference here, huh? So see, going too fast here, reading too quick. So that is not the number one category. The number one category is the $1 million to $1,499,000 range. Buy one home. 93 homes in that category. So the 700 to 799, 92 homes. 1 million to 1,499,000, 93 homes. So off by one home. So both of those categories had a high above asking. So the 700 to 799, 5% above asking, you know, with the 92 homes. And then the one that had 93 homes, the 1 million to 1.499 million, however you want to say it, 4% over asking for those 93 homes. So very hot categories, you know, in Norfolk County in those two categories. So that's pretty much it for Norfolk County. Let's jump real quick into the investments. So Massachusetts, multifamily, on average, asking. Average list price, $890,000. Average sales price, $886,000. So yeah, a little bit below, but on average, you know, I guess it comes out to even when they do the math. So average days on market, 34. And that was based on 567 properties. And, you know, again, you got 400,000 to 1,499,000. That range, just like we're seeing with the single family homes, it's even, 1% above, even, 1% above. Line of demarcation there. Once you jump over that $1,499,000 range and you go into the $1,500,000 range to $1,999,000, so that little segment right there, it goes from 1% above, when you're right below that, at the $1.49 million range, to 1% below asking. So it's 1% above, and then drops to 1% below. And then the $2 million, the $2,499,000 range, it was actually 4% below asking. But then, this is kind of different as far as trends we've been seeing with single family. When you go over that to the $2,500,000 to $2,999,000, 12% above asking. So a little bit of an outlier there. All the rest in those higher price points were below asking on average, but this one price point, 12% over asking. All right, real quick walkthrough with Bristol County multifamily. Just like Massachusetts, even. So average list price, $667,000. Average sales price, $661,000. So again, slightly under, but when they do the rounding, for whatever reason, it comes out to even, right? Average days on market, 36. Number of listings, 77. So we had 77. So here, a lot of it is 1% below, even, 1% above. I mean, there's a couple lines of demarcation. One is slight, so 700,000 to 799,000, that range there. 1% above. As soon as you go over it to the 800,000 to 899,000, it goes to 1% below asking. And then here's the line of demarcation that kind of stood out the most, although one home on one of them, so take it for what it's worth. So the one home that was in the $900,000 to $999,000 range sold for even, but soon as you went above that, 1 million to 1,499,000, 8% below asking. So even, and then for whatever reason, that 1 million to $1,499,000 range that we've seen hot in single family homes, again, this is multifamily homes, you're seeing a dip here. So a little inconsistency with multifamily versus single family. So I thought that was interesting. All right, let's close this out with my hometowns, right? What's been going on in my hometowns, right? One of them made the hot towns list. We'll get to that in a minute. So Swansea, let's start in Swansea. 1% over asking. But what really stood out to me in Swansea was the number of homes, right? 22 homes sold in Swansea. A lot of homes sold last 30 days in Swansea. And on average, 1% over asking. Average sales price, $658,000. Average days on market, 27. And let's look at some of the categories here, right? So 400,000 of 449,000, 3% above asking. Category above that, 450,000 of 499,000, 3% above asking for that also, right? And then it drops down a little to 1% over. But the one home that was, you know, the highest for this category was the $600,000 to $699,000 range. It was one home, but it was listed at $725,000. It sold for $735,000. So there was one home that really stood out. It was the only home in this category from the $600,000 to $699,000 range. It was only on the market for 9 days, but it went for 5% over asking. So it was listed at $599,000 and it sold for $631,000. And then as far as number of homes, again, same trend we've been seeing throughout, 500,000 to 599,000, 5 homes in that category, and they went on average 1% over asking. But that other category that's starting to creep up, 1 million to 1,499,000, in Swansea it was 2 homes, but they went on average 6% below asking. So on the hot towns, you know, when I went through the hot towns, that video hasn't come out yet, but that'll be coming out soon. I'm recording it, you know, right after this video. But on the hot towns, when I was looking at it, 1 million to 1,499,000, that range has been hot in the hot towns. But for whatever reason in Swansea, it's a deal. And we've been seeing it, you know, throughout this video. It's hit or miss in that category. But the 2 hottest categories in Swansea was the $400,000 to $499,000 range. So on average, like we were just saying, 3% above asking, and you had 4 homes and 3 homes, and then days on market, 18 days and 12 days on market. So fast in those categories. So 400,000 to 499, selling really fast in Swansea in the last 30 days. Seekonk, what's going on in Seekonk? So Seekonk, 2% above asking. Average list price, 591,000. Average sales price, 605,000. Average days on market, 35, based on 13 homes. So what was going on in the details in Seekonk, right? So everything was kind of lumped together here. 400,000 to 899,000. Majority of the homes were sold in that category. And they went on average 2% above, 4% above, 2% above, 1%, 2% above, then 1% below asking for just one home that was in one of the categories. As far as the hottest category, and it was only one home, but it was the 1 million to 1,499,000 that we just saw cold in Swansea. That one sold for 7% above asking in its neighboring town in Seekonk. So it was listed at 999,000 and it sold for 1,065,000. And you know, the other categories that stood out as far as number of homes, 500,000 to 599, 4 of the homes that was number 1, and it was 2% above asking. But then right below that, 450,000 to 499,000. It was only 3 homes, but right neck and neck with the 500 to 599 of 4 homes. But those 3 homes in the 450 to 499 range, 4% above asking. And days on market, a big difference, only 16 days. Whereas the 500 to 599, 30 days on average on market. All right, only a few towns left here. Let's go. Somerset. What's going on in Somerset? 2% above asking. Average list price, 522,000. Average sales price, 533,000. Average days on market, 38, based on 16 homes. So we're seeing a number of homes sold in the hometowns in the last 30 days. So really quick here, because all those 16 homes were all in like this small range, right? From 400,000 to 699,000, all the homes were in that range. So what did they look like, right? So 400,000 or 449,000, 3 of the homes were there, 6% above asking. 6%. So that is a hot range in Somerset, right? 18 days on average in market in that category. Let's take a look at what else, right? So the most number of homes was in the 500,000 to 599,000 range. 9 of the homes were in that range, and they went on average 2% over asking. All right, what about Dighton? Let's talk about Dighton. Dighton, it's on the hot towns list this month. Woo, Dighton, let's give them a hand. Dighton, right? 6% over asking. Now, you're only clapping if you're a seller. If you're a buyer, you're like, whoa, pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. I want the cold towns. Give me the cold towns. Come back in January. We'll do that list. But let's look at the numbers here, right? So average list price, 672,000. Average sales price, 713,000. Okay, based on 9 homes. So not as many as the other hometowns, but 9 homes, still a good sample size, right? So again, everything grouped together, 500,000 to 899,000. Everything was sold in those categories. And number of homes sold, it's not the 500,000 to 599. They missed it by 1. Okay, so they had 3 of the homes in that category. They went on average 5% over asking. And then the number 1 category for number of homes, 800,000 to 899,000. 4 homes, so most number of homes. And those 4 homes went on average 11% over asking. So they went on average 762,000 on the market, and they sold for 840,000 was the average, in only 8 days on market. So that, ladies and gentlemen, puts them on the hot towns list. So they're 6% over asking as a town, and that one category just smoking hot as far as selling. 8 days on market and 11% over in the most number of homes. So everyone's trying to get the homes that are in that 800,000 to $899,000 range that are trying to get into Dighton. All right, we have come to the last town in the hometowns list for this month. Rehoboth. Rehoboth, what's going on? 1% above asking. Average list price, 942,000. Average sales price, 946,000. Average days on market, 49. Number of listings, 19. So that's what's been going on in Rehoboth. That's a high number of days on market. There's a couple categories though that a little crazy. There was one house that was on the market for 160 days and another one on the market for 181 days. So that 40 days on market, a little skewed some of the other categories, but all of them were, you know, higher than Massachusetts for the most part. You know, 42 days on market in one category, 34 days, 59 days, 41 days. The one category that was the hottest category as far as number of homes, 700,000 to 799,000. And that was 7 of the homes, so 7 of the 19 were in that category, and they were on the market an average of 25 days, and they went for 2% above asking. So, you know, the categories that had the most above asking were 500,000 to 599 with 2% above, 600 to 699, 3% above, and then like we just talked about, 700 to 799, 2% above. As soon as you get over that, it starts to even out to even. And then that one home that was on the market for 41 days, it was on the market for 1.4 million. It sold for 1.3 million. So it went for 7% below asking. And still Rehoboth ended up overall, you know, 1% over asking. All right, so that's a wrap for this month's real estate market update. July going by fast. You know, it's going to be the end of the summer before we know it, but let's not think about that yet. It's still summertime. Hope you're enjoying it. 4th of July was fun. Had a lot of fun watching the fireworks with my family. Pierce Memorial, if you ever go there, East Providence, I've been to a whole bunch of places, but I love that place. It's got music playing. It's really cool. Hang out in the lawn chairs. But you know, that's my little 4th of July tidbit for you. Been to a bunch. Great family place. Great to walk around. You have food trucks, live band, playing Proud to Be an American while the fireworks are going off. I mean, just can't beat that, you know. It's like America, you know, that whole thing. That's how you feel when you're there, right? So, but anyway, you know, that's it for real estate market update. I'm also doing insurance. So if you need help with insurance, I'm sure you've seen some of those videos. I'm more than happy to take a look at your homeowners, your auto, you know, whatever you got, you know, ATV, trailer, I mean, all kinds of stuff. You know, life insurance, I got my license in that also. So any help you need with that, but you know, just give me a call, shoot me a text message, send me an email.